You pull your onions in the summer, and they're barely bigger than a walnut, some of them not even as big as the little sets you put in the ground. And you can't figure out why. You watered them, you kept the weeds down, you did everything you thought you were supposed to do. So you tell yourself you just don't have the hand for onions. That some people can grow them, and some can't. But that's not true at all. An onion is one of the easiest things you'll ever grow. You could practically toss one on bare dirt, and it would take root and come up. The hard part was never growing an onion. The hard part is growing a big one, the kind that fills your whole palm like a softball. And that comes down to exactly two things. Two keys. Once you know them, you'll be pulling onions that size every single summer. So, here's the piece most people never get told. The whole secret behind a big onion. An onion actually lives through two separate seasons in its growing life, not one. First, there's the leaf growing stretch, where the plant is pushing up green tops and doing nothing visible underground. Think of that as the investment, the money going in. Then comes the bulbing stretch, where the plant stops making leaves altogether and pours everything it has left into swelling that bulb. That's the payoff, the return on what you put in. And here's the part that changes everything. Every leaf that onion grows during that first season turns into a ring inside the bulb during the second. Every single leaf becomes a ring. So the more leaves you can get that plant to grow before it switches over to bulbing, the more rings it has to swell out, and the bigger the onion you pull. A small onion is simply one that never managed to grow enough leaves in time. Get the leaf growth right, and the size takes care of itself. Quick note before we go further. My name is Naomi Yoder, and the household knowledge I share here, along with plenty more of it, is more than could ever fit in one video. I've collected all of it into a book, linked below. If today's tips are useful to you, that's where the rest of what my mother and grandmother taught me is gathered, all in one place. Now back to the onions. My grandmother grew onions the size of both your fists put together, and she grew them out of the exact same garden soil as everyone else on her road. I asked her once, as a kid, how hers turned out so much bigger than everyone else's. And she told me, plain as anything, that an onion is a lot like raising a child. What it becomes depends almost entirely on how it started out and how it's fed. Start it early and feed it properly, and it'll reach its full size. Start it late and feed it poorly, and nothing you do afterward will fix that. That was her whole philosophy on it. Start early, feed well. And tucked inside that are the two keys. Let me walk through each one the way she walked me through them. The first key is timing when you plant, and it's the one people get wrong more than anything else. You want those onions in the ground as early as your soil will possibly allow. As early in the season as the ground can be worked and the young plants can handle it. Here's why that matters. Tying back to what I said about the leaves, an onion only gets a limited window of leaf growing time before the lengthening days of summer trigger it to stop making leaves and switch over to building the bulb. That switch is controlled by day length, not by anything you do. Once the days stretch past a certain point, the onion flips to bulbing, whether it grew 10 leaves or 20 by then. So the earlier you get that plant into the ground, the longer its leaf growing window runs before that switch flips, and the more leaves it stacks up, and the more rings it'll have to swell into a big bulb. Plant it late, and you've cut short its whole investment period. It flips to bulbing before it ever built up the leaves needed for real size, and no amount of feeding afterward can make up for leaves it never grew. Early planting alone is what buys the plant that long leaf season a big onion is built out of. Now, the exact timing changes depending on where you live, and I'll be honest with you, rather than hand you one date that doesn't fit everyone. Down in warmer climates, folks plant onions in late fall, even November, and let them grow slowly through a mild winter. Up in colder regions, you plant at the very first opportunity in spring, the moment the soil can be worked, or you start them indoors ahead of that and set the young plants out once it warms. The specific date isn't the point, the principle is. Get them in the ground at the earliest moment your own climate allows, so the plant gets the longest possible leaf-growing stretch before summer flips it over to bulbing. Learn your region's earliest safe planting window, and don't push it back a week later than you have to. One more thing worth knowing about what you plant, since it affects how well the onion keeps later. There are plenty of onion varieties, and some grow sweeter while others store longer. The sweet, big, mild ones often don't hold up nearly as well in storage through winter as the firmer, sharper storing varieties. So if you're growing to eat fresh through summer, go ahead and grow the big sweet types and enjoy them right away. But if you're growing to fill a cellar and eat from your own stock clear into spring, lean toward the good-keeping varieties, even if they end up a bit smaller. An onion that rots in December isn't much use to you no matter how big it got. Grow a bit of both if you've got the space, and just know which one you're planting for. Now, the second key, feeding. Here's the thing to understand. An onion is a heavy feeder, a genuinely hungry plant, and it wants far more water and far richer feeding than most people ever give it. A starved, dry onion will stay small no matter how early you planted it. So you have to feed it well and keep it watered steadily throughout that whole leaf growing stretch, because that's when it's building the very leaves that turn into your rings. Commercial growers handle this with drip lines, injectors, and bag-numbered fertilizers, and there's nothing wrong with that approach for them. But it's probably not yours, and it's not mine either. So let me walk you through the plain, old-fashioned way of doing the same job. Before you ever plant, work your onion bed rich and deep with plenty of well-rotted manure and finished compost, because an onion wants loose, fat, crumbly soil to grow in. That worked-in richness is the foundation for everything that comes after. Onions are shallow-rooted, and they can't go hunting deep for food, so it all has to sit right there near the surface where they can reach it. Here's a finer detail my grandmother knew, and it lines up exactly with what commercial growers do with their different feed blends through the season. A young onion just getting established wants phosphorus and potash more than anything else, since those build the roots and get the plant settled in roots before shoots. The old-fashioned way to supply those is bone meal worked into the bed for phosphorus and wood ash from your own stove for potash, both mixed in right at planting time where the young roots will find them. Then, once the onion moves past establishing its roots and into serious leaf production, it starts craving nitrogen above everything, because nitrogen drives green leaf growth. And leaf growth is exactly what we're chasing in that season. So as they grow, feed them nitrogen. The old ways of doing that are a side dressing of well-rotted manure worked in alongside the row, or watering them with manure tea, or a good fish emulsion every couple of weeks through the leaf season. Phosphorus and potash worked in early for the roots, nitrogen fed steadily through the season for the leaves, the exact same logic the commercial growers follow with their numbered bags, just sourced from your own compost pile and ash bucket instead. And the watering has to stay consistent, because an onion is thirsty, and letting it dry out and stress will stun it. Water deep and regularly through that entire leaf season, not a light sprinkle, but a real soaking down to the roots, often enough that the bed never goes bone dry. Here's a place where the old way actually beats a drip line, laying a good mulch down the onion rows. Straw or grass clippings or something similar holds moisture in the soil so it doesn't dry out between waterings. It keeps the ground cool and even, and it smothers weeds that would otherwise steal the very food and water you're giving your onions. Mulch does the same job as a drip line's steady moisture, for free, using what you already have on hand. Now here's a trick worth the whole video on its own: thinning, because it lets you get both green onions and big onions off the same planting. Plant your onions close together in the row, closer than they'll eventually want to stand, just a few inches apart. Once the little bulbs have grown to about the size of a quarter or $half, go down the row and pull out every other one. Eat those as green onions, sweet, tender, an early harvest straight for the table. The ones left behind now have the room, the food, and the water that the pulled ones would have taken, so they keep swelling into the big bulbs you're after. Nothing gets wasted. The close planting hands you a batch of green onions at thinning time, and the thinning hands the remaining plants the room to grow big. 2 harvests from one bed. That's old garden thrift. Now stop and think for a second about why so few people know these 2 simple keys. Why growing a big onion has come to seem like something only certain people with a green thumb can manage. Nobody had to plan it this way for it to work out in someone's favor. There's money in selling you onion sets, seed, and bagged fertilizer every spring, and money in the grocery store selling you onions year-round. There's none at all in someone teaching you that 2 plain keys, early planting and rich, steady feeding, will grow you a whole summer's worth of huge onions from a corner of your own garden for next to nothing. So that knowledge just quietly stopped getting passed down mother to daughter, not because it stopped being true. A leaf is still a ring, same as it always was, but because nobody profits from telling you. My grandmother grew fist-sized onions out of the very same dirt everyone else had. And somewhere between her garden and ours, that plain knowledge slipped away until a big onion started to look like pure luck when it was only ever early planting and good feeding all along. The fix for it is 2 keys and a corner of ground. Plant your onions as early as your season will allow, so they get that long stretch of leaf growth a big bulb is built from. Feed them rich, and water them steadily all through that leaf season so they have the strength to build those leaves. Thin them for green onions, and give the keepers room to swell. And come summer, you'll pull onions that fill your whole hand out of your own dirt for almost nothing. That's how you take it back. One early planting, one well-fed row at a time, putting the growing of your own food back into your own hands. So here's what I'd ask of you. This coming season, plant your onions at the very earliest your ground allows, and feed them the way I just showed you. Then come summer, come back and tell me in the comments how big they turned out compared to what you used to pull. I genuinely love hearing about a good harvest. And tell me your county and how old your house is while you're at it, because the seasons and soils shift so much from place to place, both the timing and the feeding, and I learned something from every one of you about how onions grow where you live. And if your mother or grandmother had a trick with onions I haven't covered here, tell me that most of all, because that's exactly how this knowledge stays alive. We pass along what we were given. I read every comment, and I learned from all of you the same way the women before us learned from each other across a fence line. 1. Garden, and 1 season at a time. Next time, I'll show you how to cure and store those big onions once you've grown them. The drying, the braiding, and the cool, dark storage that carries onions clear through winter into spring, so none of this growing goes to waste in the keeping. There's a right, old way to grow and store nearly everything a garden gives you, and almost none of it requires a trip to the store. But for this coming season, start with the 2 keys. Plant early as your ground will bear, to buy that long stretch of leaf growth a big onion needs. Feed rich and water steady through that leaf season with compost, manure, and ash. Thin for green onions, and let the keepers swell. And you'll come to understand, the same way my grandmother did in her own garden, that a big onion was never a matter of luck or a green thumb you were born with or without. Only ever a matter of starting it early and feeding it well, same as raising anything to its full size. A garden tended the old, plain way is the one that remembers how those women grew onions that filled both hands out of a corner of their own ground. And that's a thing we're only just beginning to remember.